Hi, I'm Steve Barg, City Administrator for the City of Marshfield. Welcome to our regular post-council meeting news conference, where we wrap up and discuss the items that were approved and discussed by the council at the previous regular meeting. In this case, we have two meetings to run down because there was a 5 o'clock meeting for the CIP discussion on May 25th. And that was followed the next hour at 6 o'clock by the regular meeting. I have with me here today Mike Warren from WDLB. So Mike, take it away.
All right, thanks, Steve. Let's start with that first meeting, CIP, part of the alphabet soup that's at City Hall that we often hear, these acronyms that don't mean anything to the public, but everyone at City Hall knows what they are. Maybe just explain what that is and where that process is at after the May 25th meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. We talk about two financial documents really during the year. There are big ones. One is a budget that everybody hears about. That's the one in the fall that ultimately leads to the tax rate. But the other is our capital improvement program. It's a 5-year document. We update it every year because it's kind of a fluid document. Our priorities change over time. You might slot repair of a certain street in 2024, but then the next year comes along and you realize that there's one worse than that one and you back it up another year. So what we discussed last night in the second meeting of the CIP process was the final projects. We looked at the ones from UWSP. Brian Panzer presented and addressed their plans for the next 5 years. And then because we'd gotten done with everything else on May 13th, we dove right into, does the council want to make changes? And there were only a couple minor changes made. And the plan is now being presented for adoption by the council at the next regular meeting on June 8th. So you say, well, gosh, you're talking about spending millions of dollars. How could there only have been a couple of changes? Well, the staff has really been driving this process recently in the last couple of years. And we really reined it in. We've sort of brought borrowing down to a lower amount to reflect the fiscal realities we're dealing with right now. And at the end of the day, there wasn't a lot to do. I mean, I think that the council would like to see us do more street work. They'd always like to see us do more road projects, but the money just isn't there. So they went largely with our recommendations, and that will now be our blueprint going forward. So if you're listening to me right now and you're thinking, boy, when is my street going to be redone? Give us a call. We can talk to you about where it's on the plan for the next 5 years, and try and help you out as far as what to expect. But at least we have a guideline now going forward to make decisions from.
Is that plan largely streets? I mean, because it's capital improvement, so you're talking, other major capital projects, not just streets, but it's by and large, it's streets?
Well, we still call it the capital improvement program, Mike, but we have now broadened the definition 3 years ago to include other major expenses and even technology expenses. We replaced a server for $30,000. That's now on this plan where it wouldn't have been before. The trigger is anything that has a useful life of 5 years or more and has a dollar value of $10,000 or more. So the bar has come down a little bit, but the big items, the one that make up the majority of the expense, are typically major street projects.
Okay, and what was the final dollar amount?
The amount we're going to borrow over the next 5 years is $17 million. And, the lion's share of that is street work. I'll bet 80% of that is for street projects. We also spend money on upkeeping our facilities and our buildings. Sometimes it's a roof, sometimes it's whatever. And then there's some other minor expenses like I talked about with technology. A couple of years ago, we were borrowing, I think it was more than $20 million during the 5-year period. But our budget constraints and the concerns we're dealing with. So we've tried to tighten that up a little bit at the recommendation of our financial advisor.
So it is all borrowing? I mean, you borrow for every project in the plan?
Yeah, well, no. There's borrowing is one component. There's also a lot of other funding sources. Room tax, for example. We use our share of the room tax money to do a lot of park and zoo improvements. We use some property tax money, although there's not as much to go around now for capital as there used to be. We also have, grants that come into picture, donations. Sometimes we can use donated money to do projects in the parks and the zoo. There's user fees. The projects for the wastewater are paid for by the revenues from people who use the sewer service. So there's other revenue sources. We tend to focus mainly on the general borrowing. There's also TIF projects that we borrow for that are covered by the TIF increments. But the general borrowing is usually the attention getter. That's the one that dictates what, down the road, what our bond rating is going to be. How are we doing in terms of our debt management? So that's where the attention largely goes.
So what are the big ticket items in this version of the CIP? What's coming down the pike here that maybe citizens would be interested in knowing about?
Well, the biggest project in the near term, Mike, is the rebuilding of 17th Street over by the fairgrounds, from the area from roughly Peach over toward Maple. That project's been talked about for a long time. It's narrow road, and it needs to be upgraded and I believe widened as part of it. Utilities are involved, I think. So that's probably the single biggest project. A lot of the money we're trying to spend in this 5-year period on streets is the mill and overlay work that we do, where we grind up the existing surface, lay it back down, and then put 2 inches more of asphalt. And the reason for this is, we used to do more reconstructs. I think there might be a couple more reconstructs in the project in the 5-year period, but we're trying to get as much useful life as we can out of the streets. And the way you do that is by doing these overlays. So I'm trying to remember the other projects that were on there for the, for reconstruction, but they were small in comparison to 17.
Yeah, nothing like, there's nothing like an aquatic center or a
Yeah.
new library or a new fire station or anything out there anymore on this plan, is there? Nothing major like that.
No, the two biggest ones being talked about down the road are the possible relocation, but certainly upgrading of the Public Works garage and the police station, which you may recall a couple years ago, we talked about other sites, but the council seemed to want to stay on the current footprint and just renovate and expand to make that a better building that was built about 40 years ago, I think. So the police station and the Public Works garage are on the radar, but not within the 5-year window. We have in the last decade done a lot. We've done a lot with the fire station, the library and community center, the aquatic center, and other things. So it may be a few years before our next big project comes around the bend.
Okay. All right. Anything else on that plan or that meeting?
No, I think it went well, and like I said, it'll be on the June 8th agenda for final approval.
Okay. All right, well, then there was a regular council meeting on May 25th as well, and lots of items there that got lots of discussion. Another long, I think, 4-hour meeting after the closed session?
Correct. Correct.
And we can start there. There were a couple of closed session items that had to do with one of the regular agenda items, which was request to set parameters for the pre-sale of lots for the Marshfield City subdivision. So maybe just bring us up to speed on what the presentation was, I guess. I think there was a presentation and I think there was some action. And then I know there was some action coming out of closed session regarding this. Can you kind of fill in all of the details on what the council did with those motions and after that presentation on Tuesday?
Yeah, sure. The council actually got a presentation for the second straight meeting from Josh Miller, our Development Services Director, and he did a wonderful job as he did back on May 11th. The issue is this, and there's some discomfort among at least, maybe a couple members of the council, possibly others, about the idea that the city would be this involved in making housing development work. We, back in, I think 5 or 6 years ago, when Jason Angel was our Development Services Director, he tried to move something like this forward too, to get the city to be the lead player in getting more lots available for building. And it didn't work out at the time for a couple of reasons, but the city now is looking at property. I can say where it is now. It's near the intersection of Sycamore and 5th in that area, just east of Sycamore, I believe. The streets involved are Cypress and Birch coming off of 5th. But the idea is to try and get another 20-some lots available for development and get some building going. We have so much demand for new lots, and people who want to live here, they maybe have taken a job here, they're looking at taking a job here, and they can't find a place to build. Now, it's not the end of the world if they build in the town of McMillan or the town of Lincoln or somewhere else, but we want to capture as much as we can for people who want to work in our community. So these properties are expected to produce home values in the area of $350,000, maybe $400,000 market value, less for assessed value, but because of our assessment ratio. But the city would, buy the property and work with the people who want to build, set covenants, set parameters. We want to see a home size of roughly, at least I think it's 1,700 square feet. We'd ideally like to see basements and possibly 2,100 square feet. and set some other expectations. You need to buy the property by, I think it's June 1st of 2022, and begin construction by June 1st of 2023, something like that. We don't want people sitting on these lots. We don't want them sitting idly. We want tax base. We want homes. So it's a different world for the city. Normally, we let the private market do this. But in this case, we really want to incentivize development because it just is not happening due to the lack of lots. So we're excited. The authorization was given to move forward with acquiring the property. And, we're working on the pre-sales. I think Josh Miller reported last night, he's got 15 people interested in pre-selling lots to them. And we need to get those signed on the dotted line, so to speak, with intent. Everything seems to be coming together for this new development. It's going to be called Daniel's Edition.
Yeah, okay, so that's what I was gonna ask about. They came out of closed session and said offer to, purchase Daniel's Edition. How big of a parcel are we talking about? And where specifically is it again?
Yeah, it's 10 acres of land. It's near the intersection of, let's just say, Sycamore and West Fifth Street,
Okay,
over toward the college area.
okay,
The streets that are going to be extended to go into what'll be this subdivision are Cypress and Birch. So it's just east, I believe, of Sycamore. And again, we're looking at, I think, I keep saying 20-something. I think it might be 23 or 24 lots, which we believe are going to be gobbled up fairly soon. Marshfield is not a fast-growing community, but there's a lot of pent-up demand, it appears, for some of this housing. Now, one of the other concerns, if I can say it too, Mike, is we've talked before about the need for affordable housing. Maybe homes a little bit lower priced than $350 or $400. And we get that. We're talking about maybe a mixed-use TIF district that might help in that area, maybe later this year or as we go into 2022 and 2023. But everything we're hearing, Ashley Frederick was here last night speaking. She's spoken before. A couple of other speakers spoke to the need for housing in this $300,000 to $400,000 range. And it's believed that there's a market for it.
and what's the purchase price of the property?
I don't think the exact number's been nailed down, but it's in that range, I believe, of $250,000 roughly. The lots we're looking at being able to sell for $45,000 on average, which is, I understand, maybe lower than the market. It's amazing how the market has come up in recent years. But we're trying to make them affordable with the city's participation to generate that interest, to generate that market for people to buy and build.
Okay, so $250,000, so what is that, 250,000 roughly? And then
In that general ballpark,
and then you add on the city's portion, which I think was revised down between meetings. I think it was initially upwards of 620-some thousand, and I thought I heard Josh Miller say last night it's down around 500,000?
Well, part of what's going on is we're going to solicit, and we believe we're going to get assistance from other parties that benefit from this. It's the same group we went through back 5 years ago. We're talking to Wood County, we're talking to Marshfield Utilities. We're certainly looking at our own wastewater utility who benefits from new customers coming online. EDB's involved. So he may have given another number to reflect the fact that we're expecting the city's portion to ultimately be less than first quoted. But the city's definitely a key player in making this happen financially.
Okay, but initially it sounds like it's almost $750,000 up front for the city with buying the property and then putting in the infrastructure?
Yeah, I'm not doing the math, but
just
somewhere in there.
ballparking it, right?
The city is definitely making a serious investment.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Josh is being asked about is ROI. How long will it take for the city and the EDB to recoup the money that they put into this project? It's not going to happen real fast, but we believe that. There's a real confidence level about the saleability of these properties and the fact that people will buy and build on them, because those folks really don't have many options today that are befitting of what they want to try and accomplish. And this could be a very nice subdivision that people, again, the early pre-sale interest is just strong.
Yeah, and even if it's $1 million or whatever, but you get all that back. The number that caught my attention was, what did I hear, $9 million something in terms of property taxes?
Yeah, ultimately.
Right? That is quite a return on investment.
It is, and that's a total build out. And again, we're not Sun Prairie and we're not the Fox Valley, so build up won't be as immediate as it might be in those areas. But yeah, we're looking at a very large increase in the tax base.
So do individuals buy the lots from who, the city?
Well,
Or how does this, what's the chain? What's it, to help me follow the chain of how this happens in terms of the city has the land now. Who buys the lots and then who, puts up the homes, that type of thing?
It could be an individual, I suppose, but I think what we're looking at is builders on behalf of people looking to buy, even, developers buying with a commitment to build on those parcels. So, I mean, there may be a middleman chain here, but that's how they're likely to go down.
Okay. And so that moves forward, immediately, right?
Well, yeah, it does. I mean, so, we've been given the direction to move forward on the pre-sale agreements. We've been given the direction to move forward by putting this on the next Board of Public Works agenda to bid out start the process of bidding out the infrastructure. The goal is to get the infrastructure done in October. And, it's a quick timeline, but our engineering department is ready for this. And that way we'll have things ready so we can start actually moving forward with this development by later in the fall. And seeing things happen. Once the infrastructure is out there, you'll see things popping.
Okay. Anything else on that one?
I don't think so. Again, I just want the public to know that this may seem out of place. I know I'm a market person at heart. I believe that for the most part, the free market can get things done. And this is one of those examples where it just seems like we need a little bit more city involvement to make it happen. And I hope people understand that that's not something we do lightly. We take that very seriously, but we're missing out on people building and living here in Marshfield, and here's an opportunity.
Okay. All right. One of the other big items was on this agenda, maps. Marshfield Area Pet Shelter had several items related to maps on this agenda. One with this issue of kind of trying to control the cat overpopulation. And then this other item having to do with the agreement MAPS has with the city for services related to impounded animals. And maybe just start with the new program, I guess, that was, I guess Alderman, I think, signed off on in terms of strays and feral cats being caught, turned in, and then, I mean, the goal here is to control the overpopulation of cats with this effort, right?
Yeah, we're talking about wild cats, cats that don't have owners, and they're trapped. The TNR is trap, neuter, and release. I don't see that many in my neighborhood, but I hear that there's a lot of people who are seeing a great rise in the number of feral cats and wild cats that are roaming about in their neighborhoods. And so this is an idea that came from MAPS, and I know our ordinance enforcement is on board with it too, to try and take animals that are trapped and neuter them, release them, and at least they're not going to be having more litters repeatedly. And I've heard the stories, maybe you have too, about how many litters some of these cats are involved in over time. So if we don't get a handle on it, it's probably going to continue to grow. It's a one-year trial, Mike, which means we'll be reviewing this in the spring of 2022 to see and get a report from these same folks from MAPS and probably Bob Larson from Ordinance as well. Is it working? How many have been neutered? Are we seeing evidence of reducing numbers? Are we still seeing evidence of increasing numbers of stray cats? And then we'll decide at that point whether we want to continue to support that.
Yeah, and it's something that really doesn't have is there a cost factor to the city?
No, there isn't a direct cost factor. No, there's certainly the possibility as more, we have more cats that end up, being impounded per se, if that's how this goes down, then there might be additional cost. But by and large, it's not a cost issue to the city. It's a support for a program that's pretty creative, but pretty new. And I think that's part of the reason we want to do it on only a one-year trial basis and then get some numbers. How has it impacted the citizens? How has it impacted the city? And is it making a difference?
And I think initially they're agreeing to basically start with, I don't think initially they're going to be actively trapping. I think they're going to basically start with the animals that are being turned into the facility.
They are, and that's why we're not considering it to have a cost factor initially.
Okay.
Now, if MAPS were to say, look, it's getting worse, we want to actively trap them ourselves. I assume at that point, there'll be a cost factor to the city because they'll be treated as new impounds. But if Steve Barg or Mike Warren traps a cat and provides it, they just want to be able to do this procedure, send it on its way, and hope that we won't see more cats as a result.
Yeah, and that's the whole goal, right? Is to get these cats fixed so we don't have this problem every year where now we have more cats than we had before the winter, and that's the problem.
Yeah, there are probably some people who don't like cats, I'm guessing, but most of us have nothing against cats. We just don't want to see an overpopulation and the impacts that come from that. So that's why we want to try and control the growth in the number of cats.
Okay. And in relation to that, there was another agenda item having to do with the agreement that the city has with MAPS to provide what? I know we talk about impounded animals, so maybe just clarify what MAPS is doing for the city and what this new agreement now will cover in terms of A, the services, and B, the price tag, because I know that was the sort of the sticking point, I think, at the meeting with at least a few of the aldermen. At first, they sort of had some sticker shock in terms of the prices or the fees that now go up under this agreement that basically covers what? Can you kind of flesh out some of those details for us?
Yeah, first of all, the process. This is not the norm. This came through the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee, and they were supportive of it, but they said, we want this to be a regular agenda item. Don't tuck it under consent agenda. We think that other members of the council who are not on the Finance Committee are going to want to talk about this. And so we did. When MAP started back in 2015 and started working with us after that, they were still trying to get up to speed. They weren't sure how well they were going to do in terms of handling impounds, what their costs might be. But they've always been committed to providing excellent care, a greater level of care than was provided by the previous individual who did a great job for the city. He really did. But they're doing things like medical treatment, vaccinations, microchipping, and those kind of things. So they initially were charging a lower amount. The last contract in 2017 that we've been operating under, they were charging or have been charging $7 a night per cat and $13 per dog. Well, they're not really even fully recovering their costs because of all these other medical procedures and treatments and help that they give these animals. So they want to bump it up from 7 to 13 for cats, 13 to 23 for dogs. And if you do the math, we're talking about roughly an 80% increase in fees. That gets a member's attention from the council. It does. So the argument is they've been doing this all along. They're looking to get compensated for their costs. And then Bob Larson from Ordinances weighed in and said, if they didn't do some of these things, we'd be taking them to vets. We'd be taking them to the clinic and places like that. And that would be staff time. That would be city costs ultimately anyway. It's much better if they're providing those medical treatments. So, one of the things that I think swayed the council in the last two meetings between the Finance Committee and the council is that other communities around us are signing on to the same cost. So it's not just the city of Marshfield paying $23 per dog, but the village of Hewitt, I'm making this up, paying $12 per dog. I mean, we're all coming to the same place based upon the service level being provided. The other caveat to bring into the mix is because for a long time, state law said you had to hold an impounded animal for 7 days. In 2017, I think it was somewhere around there, the state law changed and they reduced that to 4. But it just permits municipalities to go down to 4. You can still stay at 7 if you want. Back then, the city said, let's just stay with 7. We want to give time for dogs and cats to be claimed by their owners. But now, ordinance is more supportive of going to 4 days. MAPS wants to go to 4 days. They made the argument that most dogs are picked up very quickly if they have owners. Even cats are usually picked up within roughly, 24 hours, thereabouts. So when we're holding these animals for day 5, 6, and 7, it's unlikely that the owners are going to come forward. So they'd like to be able to start moving into the adoption type of world. So what they're saying, what I'm cutting to the chase on here, not very quickly, but I'm getting there, is that even though the fees will go up by 80%, if the council agreed to reduce the hold time from 7 days to 4 days, the maximum amount the city will ever pay for an unclaimed impound is still basically the same. Our total exposure really doesn't change. So the council is supportive of the agreement with MAPS. They made it clear that the reduction to 4-day holds, which is part of the agreement's predicated on that, still has to go through an ordinance process with the first and second reading in June. But if all that comes together by the end of the June time period, we'll sign the agreement, and MAPS will kick off July 1 with higher prices.
And that's basically what MAPS does, right? They provide what they are, the cities, they're not a city, a part of city government, but they're basically contracted. These fees are covering services that they provide. They're basically handling strays, impounded animals for the city of Marshfield, and they take them all the way through the adoption process from there. I mean, it's kind of an interesting collaboration, if you will, but that's basically what they're doing. They're running the city's, stray cat and dog program, essentially.
Yeah, and truthfully, you're right. They're not part of us, but we work with them closely. We help them build a facility. We contributed almost $200,000, I think, to their new building project down there in the air park. And so part of our commitment is that we want to see the dogs and cats handled in the most humane way possible. So, are we obligated to increase fees? Are we obligated to change hold times because they come to us? No, but I think we've kind of signed on to a working agreement where we want them to be successful. We want them to provide a level of care and a level of service that we feel good about. And these items kind of fit into that.
Okay. All right. Anything else on that one?
I don't think so.
Okay. There was another item that had to do with Wenzel Family Plaza, and the agenda item said request to approve transition plan for operation of Wenzel Family Plaza. Can you tell us about what this transition plan is and what the council's, action was on it?
Yeah, when we established the Wenzel Family Plaza and hired our first director, I shouldn't say we hired because that's part of the issue. It wasn't a city position, but the first director was hired a couple of years ago. The idea was we wanted a coordinator working under some people, some direction to get more activities out there, to get concerts, to get, events out there and that type of thing. And of course, we got the splash pad, we got the stage, all the great things that make Wenzel Family Plaza a nice community amenity. But at that time, the coordinator was put under Main Street's umbrella. So the players back then included the city and, Visit Marshfield and Main Street, and Wenzel Family Plaza Committee was kind of a part of that as well. Well, what came out of this is, there's been some issues about funding, there's been some issues about oversight, and Justin Casperson, our Parks and Recreation Director, came up with the idea, I believe it was his idea, to bring this person, currently Nikki Anderson, under the city's umbrella and make her a city employee. And it thought it would be a more effective way to do business. She already works with the city staff in terms of maintenance issues of the plaza and some of the things that need to be done to keep it up. And why not have her be a city staff person? So we're looking at kind of revamping the agreement a little bit. The money for her wages and benefits would come from 40% from the EDB, 40% from Visit Marshfield, and 20% from the city itself. And that's an arrangement that we believe is maybe more sustainable long-term in terms of making sure that position is funded and that we can keep doing great stuff out there at the plaza. But the other piece is the organization, and if you look at, I think what I gave you there, it shows that there's an org chart that has her position now under the Parks and Recreation Department, under, I think it's the Recreation Coordinator. Let me see if I turn to that page. Under the Recreation Manager, she would be there along other city staff. And we think that that's a better way of trying to really cement the teamwork between the Park and Recreation Department and the Wenzel Family Plaza operation. So the council was very favorable. They actually voted, I think, in favor of this. There still needs to be this position, like any other city job, will need to be sent to McGrath, our compensation coordinator or compensation consultant. They'll look at the org chart we have in the pay scale. They'll say, we think it ought to be in slot number 127 or whatever. And then we'll assign a pay range for the position by the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee and the council. We're looking at doing this late in 2021 or 2022 as far as the transition. And but we think it'll be a better way and a more sustainable way to take care of running the operations of the plaza.
Well, and I think the point that was made during the meeting was this makes sense because it's one of those venues that, I mean, you're booking events, you're scheduling things, I think there are fees involved. I think with using it for certain
Yeah.
things, which Parks and Recreation is doing already anyway for some other things. And
Yeah.
so they have they have that sort of infrastructure in place already to do that sort of thing. And so why not just add the plaza? I think I think had something to do with, making that transition a lot easier because they're doing a lot of the same things for other facilities in the city already anyway.
Yeah, there's a lot of good synergy between the Parks and Recreation Department and the Wenzel Family Plaza Coordinator. There really is. That's a big part of it. And the other part, again, is just sustainability. We didn't know how this was going to start, who pays how much initially, who supervises the employee and all that. I think now we've learned enough in the first few years to where we think this is a longer term approach that will be successful and will hopefully keep a good coordinator for a long time, hopefully keep the activities and the events growing out there and make it as successful as possible.
Yeah, because I think it was just kind of hanging out there.
It kind of was.
Yeah.
And that's not uncommon for a new venture.
Right.
I mean, everybody's excited. We built a plaza. It's great. Okay, now we need somebody to run it. Okay, who are they going to report to? Well, how are we going to make sure that position is being funded every year, year after year? Those are the questions that you learn as you get into it. And now with, I think roughly 3 years of experience, we're better set to move forward.
Okay, all right. And now that we will have another new city employee,
Yeah.
that leads me to another agenda item, discuss ongoing compensation plan implementation. Was this, I think this was part of an ongoing conversation about determining where employees fit in terms of pay scales. And I know there's this, there's minimum, midpoint, maximum in terms of where they should be, how much they should get paid. Maybe just talk about that. I think that was part of the agenda last night, right?
Yeah, it's the second straight meeting we've had compensation on the agenda, and that won't be the case every week, believe me. But Jennifer Rakew, our HR director, gave a nice presentation back on May 11th. I was out of town, I was on vacation, but I did see it on the video, walking through how our current plan works. And again, our current plan was developed in 2017 into early 2018 when it was adopted by the council. McGrath was our consultant out of Northern Illinois. And, we have several new members that have come onto the council since the early part of 2018, Mike. And so they're not fully familiar with the plan. Even those who were here back then, don't think about it every day. So Jen gave a really good refresher in terms of how the plan works, how people move from start to market to, being a higher performer, getting paid more. What are some of the ways in which the plan is set up in terms of how people are ranked? How do the performance evaluations come into play and so forth? What I came back and did last night is I said, okay, you've heard from her, and there were a few questions raised. Some were addressed, some weren't totally addressed. I followed up on them. They wanted to know a list of the communities that were used in the 2018 study. So I provided it. Mostly it's communities between 15 and 25,000, and we fit right in the middle of that. We also did use Wood County, Portage County, and Marathon County. And so I gave them a sense of how that worked. Also talked a little bit about the last couple of years, how we really haven't adjusted the scale. Well, are we falling behind CPI? If so, how far are we falling? What nobody wants to do, Mike, is to wake up in 2023 or 2024 and say, well, you know what? That study we approved in 2018 is now a waste because we haven't been following it anyway. We've fallen behind again. So now we got to find out again what they're paying in Point and what they're paying in Rapids. So what I'm calling them to is to say, look, you've heard Jennifer's presentation. You've got a chance to get refamiliar with the program. You're hearing my responses tonight to some of your questions. Are you on board? If you have questions, bring them on. If you have any misgivings at all about the plan, tell us. If we need to tweak it, we can tweak it. But when we get into budget time in October, and I'm saying, I think we need to adjust the scale by 1.5% or whatever, I want the conversation to be about the finances of that. Can we afford it? I don't want someone saying, this plan, I don't even understand it. How does it work again? I want to know that we've embraced it. So what I got out of last night was that there's a pretty strong embracing of the current plan and a desire to not fall behind. So now the next time we come forward and ask for the scale to be adjusted for cost of living or whatever it is, hopefully we'll just focus on the finances.
Okay. Anything else on that?
I don't think so. Compensation is an issue that people at home are probably watching and thinking, how does it affect me?
Yeah.
You've talked two meetings in a row now for probably an hour total about how city employees get paid. But what they need to know is city employees are the services. I mean, the people who come to your house and they look at your concerns with your driveway, or they help you with a building permit or whatever it is, that's our product. So we want to make sure that we're treating people as fairly as we can with respect to compensation.
Yeah, I think it's what, 80-something% of the entire city budget?
It's not that quite that high, but it's pretty high.
Oh, okay.
It's well over half, I believe, total in terms of pay and benefits.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. The other thing I saw that was interesting, it was a closed session item, and I don't know if there was any action on this, but I thought it was interesting. Marshfield Clinic Health System Airspace lease?
Yeah, I can't talk a whole lot about it because it's still in closed session, but you can probably guess what that means. They're talking about a walkway. And, when a
Like a skywalk.
Right.
Okay.
When you have when you have anything that involves a right of way, the city has a right to weigh in. I mean, if we're allowing our right of way to be used in some way, and in this case, even above ground is a potential impact on the right of way that the city owns. So that's the genesis for that. I really can't say a lot more, but I think you'll be hearing more about this in the weeks to come.
Okay. Yeah, I think, wasn't it actually part of a regular agenda item that was presented last night?
No, I don't think so.
I thought
think
it was first reading.
There was a,
Oh, yeah, intrusions into, okay. Allow permitted intrusions into required yards for roads that are identified as a major street. And to add language to allow skywalks as permitted intrusion.
You're right. On the planning side, you're right.
On the planning side, I think they actually have
The
to
references-
plan for this.
Yeah, because
Okay.
a typical zoning ordinance doesn't contemplate skywalks. So
they have to lease
Yep.
air.
I know, it sounds funny.
At first I thought, they
You're
got
like-
at least air to land a helicopter here or something, but it's for a skywalk.
Yeah, no,
It's
it sounds like
actually-
you're actually leasing the airspace, and what you're doing is really, leasing the fact that there's an impact on the right of way or a potential impact on the.
So the point is, I guess, they are planning another skywalk on their campus somewhere?
I can't discuss that at this point, but
Oh,
but you'll be hearing more soon.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, the part of the item you referenced about the ordinance change is public. The other part's not yet.
Okay, all right. Anything else from the meeting? Again, it was a long one. It was about almost 4 hours. But getting a lot done, I guess.
Yeah, Mike, one of the things that the council judges me on, they get to judge me on a lot of things. In fact, my performance review is coming up in the next month or two as well, is trying to even out agendas. What you want to do is have the agendas kind of be like this. You don't want to have one that's 4 hours and then one that's 30 minutes. And so you try, but like you take last night, we had, I think, 5 speakers maybe talking about the city subdivision in favor. People coming out to say that they want to see this happen. And that took a good chunk of time. And so you never know who's going to come to the podium under public comment. You never know if a conversation looks simple on paper. Even the things with maps, the maps agreement and trap new to release, you don't know if it's going to be 5 minutes or if it's going to be a half an hour. So last night got kind of long. The next one might be kind of short. I try my best to even them out, but sometimes it doesn't turn out that way.
Well, it's a sign of the times when the first, I think last night again, was 15 minutes for citizen comments. And so you're starting to see that trend where the first 15 to 20 and one meeting not too long ago was 30 minutes.
Yeah.
First half hour is just citizens coming to the podium. And that's kind of a newer trend that we have seen with everything going on. Yeah,
we went through the issues with the police chief and the mayor, and that brought a lot of people to the podium with concerns about, what we were doing. But I suspect that maybe we've gotten a little more high profile now because of some of those meetings, and that we'll see more people. It was good to see people coming out and talking about wanting to see more housing. Yeah. So we may see more people coming out to our meetings in general overall.
Okay. And again, the meetings for June are the 8th and 22nd, it looks like.
Yeah, correct. We have 5 Tuesdays in June, so we won't have a meeting on the 29th. It will be, as you said, the 8th and the 22nd. I haven't really started looking at the agenda for the 8th yet. I presume it might be a little bit lighter than this week, but we'll find out.
Okay. All right, thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Mike. And that concludes our broadcast of the recap of the council meeting from March. I'm sorry, I keep wanting to say March. I don't know why. From May 25th. Thanks for joining us, and join us next time. It'll be on Wednesday, June 9th, when we recap the council meeting from Tuesday, June 8th.